Hello everyone, welcome to lecture series on the course Foundation of Mathematics. This is lecture 9 and in this session we will be discussing the notion of family of sets, arbitrary union of sets, arbitrary intersection of sets and the examples related to this. So, first we discuss a family of sets. Now, what does this term mean, family of sets? It is basically a collection of sets in a set itself. So, the object in the set is a set itself, and that collection we call it as a family of sets. Say for example, we have 5 sets in the sets. Then we can very easily put it listing it and putting it in the set. Now, if I extend this number to say 100 or 200 or more than that, in that case it would be very difficult to list all the elements in the set or to list all the set in the sets. And even if there are infinitely many, again this is going to be a very terrible job to list all the elements in the set or to list all the set in the set. So, what we do is that we nomenclate that set, we nomenclate the properties of sets which we are considering, and we put it in a set and we call it as a family of sets. So, we need to define, to label this sets, we need to define something called as an index set. So, this is a family, here we discuss a family of set indexed by certain set. So, let us see what does this means. In mathematics, sometimes we deal with sets whose elements are sets, for example, sets of intervals, sets of lines, set of triangles. Suppose we have 30 sets, then it is natural to denote these sets as A1, A2 and this goes on till A30. This is for our convenience, and we say that these sets are labeled or indexed by this set 1, 2 till 30, right? Because we call the first set coming from this first element of this set, second set coming from the second element, and it goes on till 30. So, now why do we use this set, and this basically is called as the index set. So, why do we use this? So that we can write down the given set in a very compact and very easier form. So, let us look at some examples. Suppose we want to collect the sets of all the intervals of the form n comma n plus 1, where n is a natural number. So, basically this is a closed interval of 2 consecutive natural numbers. So, we will have the first interval will be 1 comma 2, the second interval will be 2 comma 3, 3 comma 4, and this goes on. So, for each natural number we have this interval in. Then the collection that we will be taking will be of the form in, such that each n is coming from natural number. So, it has I1, I2, I3 and it goes on, and this set is indexed or is labeled by the set of natural number. Same way, if I consider the set of the interval of the form f r is equal to r comma r plus 1, this has to be r, indexed by r. I use the notation r. So, f r is equal to r comma r plus 1 for each real number. So, the consecutive real numbers, the closed, if we consider this as the collection, if you want to consider the set of intervals of this form, this is labeled by a real number, set of real number. This is indexed by set of real number. For each real number r, we have the set fr. Then if we consider the set of universities of the form ux, indexed by the set with the elements as the countries. So, what we would do is that we would collect the university in each country. Say if I want the universities in India, I would denote this as U India, where India UX, where X denotes a country. So x, here x denotes the country. So U India will be the set of all universities in India. And so for example, again I can take USA, where this will be a set of all universities in USA. And so in that way it would be easier for us if I take the index set as the set with element as countries, and so we can write the collection as UX, where X is coming from this index set. So in each of the above cases we have family of set indexed by a set. So this is what is more important. Like for example, IN, when we want to consider the set of intervals of the form n comma n plus 1. So we know that for each natural number we have this interval. So this is indexed by a set of natural number. Then FR, the closed interval r comma r plus 1, that is indexed by set of real number, and so it goes on. Set of countries are the index set respect. So n, r and set of countries are the index set respectively in the above example. So these are called as an index set. So we formally define now the family of sets. So we need to have index set as I mentioned over here, and it has to be a non-empty, because if it is empty then we cannot define the set in that particular collection. So suppose this capital lambda is a non-empty set, and for each alpha in lambda there is a set A alpha, then we have a family of set indexed by this lambda, capital lambda, and is written as this collection A alpha, alpha coming from each lambda. So in this way I have covered all the elements, all the sets of the form A alpha, where alpha is coming from this capital lambda. So I have considered all the collection. So this set lambda is called as the index set for this family. So now, since we can define the family of a set, for this family of a set we can define those operation which we have defined for the finite set, that is union of this family of sets and the intersection of family of sets. So how this would be defined? Again, we generalize the definition. Suppose we have a collection F alpha, alpha coming from some index set capital lambda. So let this be a family of set indexed by a non-empty set alpha. Let U be the universal set. We define the union of family of sets by, so union of F alpha, alpha coming from lambda. So alpha is varying over this capital lambda. So this is the notation for union of the family of set. So this would be set of all elements in U, where U is the universal set. Now when I say that U is a universal set, each of this F alpha is a subset of U. So it's an element in U such that this X belongs to at least one of the alpha, that is one of the F alpha from this family of set. So that is same as saying there exists some k in alpha in lambda, capital lambda, such that X belongs to this F suffix k. So in other words, we say that the element belongs to this F alpha, or union of this F alpha is a set of all elements in U which belongs to at least one F alphas. So whenever I say that X is in the union of F alpha, it is same as saying X belongs to F alpha for some alpha in lambda. So here are some examples of union of family of sets. So if I consider the sets Fk for each k in n, and that each Fk is of this form minus k comma k. Now this family is indexed by the set of natural number, and each member in the family is a subset of Z. Okay, so for each k in n, so here the index set is the set of natural number. So for each natural number we are going to have this set Fk. So for example, F1 will be what? it will be the set consisting of two elements minus 1 comma 1. F2 will be the set minus 2 comma 2. F3 will be the set minus 3 comma 3, and this goes on. It is not defined for the negative integers. It is not even defined for any other real number which is lying between the natural number. So this is how this fk's are defined. So in this case, the universal set is, since each of this f alpha is coming from fk is coming from is a subset of z, this set can be considered as a universal set, or we can consider more stronger set, that is this set is contained in the set of real number. So the set of real number as well as we can consider as a universal set. So the question over here is, what is the union of fk? Now geometrically, first we need to observe this. See, if I draw a real line and 0, I have here 1 2 3 4 5, and this goes on the left hand side. We have minus 1 minus 2 minus 3 minus 4 minus 5, and this goes on. So we want to find this union of fk for each k in n. So basically, geometrically, how does this union is represented? Suppose we have two sets A and B, then the union is represented by this shaded part. It is the part of A as well as the part of B as well as the intersection. So I would see how this fk covers on the real line, and we will take the collection of all the elements in each fk's. So in first one, in f1 I have minus 1 and minus 1 and plus 1. So this minus 1 and plus 1 will belongs to union of fk. In f2 I have minus 2 comma 2. So I would add this also in the union of fk. So minus 2 comma 2. f3 minus 3 comma 3, and this goes on. So this make the things clear that union of fk is nothing but the set of all the integer except this 0, because 0 is not in any of this fk's. So now with that guess, I am sure that the union of fk is nothing but the set of all integer except the point 0. So here is the proof for that. So I claim that union of fk for each k in n is, where k is varying over this n, is the set of integers except the singleton 0. So how do I prove this? This can be proved using properties. So again, I use the typical way of proving that two sets are equal. I would be showing that this is a subset of this and the other way around. Okay, so first we prove that this union of fk is a subset of this set difference 0. Now here to prove one way, you can use the property of union. What one can observe is that each fk is a subset of z and it does not contain 0. So in fact I can say that each of this fk is a subset of z difference 0. So now if fk is a subset of z difference 0, then the union of this fk have to be subset of z difference 0. That comes to the property of subset. So we have this. So hence this f, I have taken f to be the union of fk, and therefore this f is a subset of z. Also another thing that one need to note down is that 0 is not in any of this fk, and therefore this f is contained in z difference singleton 0. So this steps makes clear that f is not contained, I mean f does not have 0 element. Next, to prove the reverse way, so what I'll do is that I'll take an element from z which is not equal to 0, or I'll take an element from z difference 0. So it's an integer and it is not equal to 0. Now what I need to show is that this n is in the union of fk. Now by definition of union of fk, it is enough to produce one such k in n such that that n belongs to that fk. So what is that k that you can produce for this n? So it is very simple. If n is in Z, n can be either a natural number or it can be a negative integer. So we are not sure about that, but we know that mod of n will be a natural number in this case, okay, and so I can define f of mod of n. This would be same as minus of mod of n by the definition of fk, minus of mod of n comma mod of n. Now mod of n can be plus or minus n depending on what n is. So if n is positive, mod of n will be plus n and mod of n will be minus n, and if mod of if n is negative, then mod of n will be minus n. So in that case, minus of mod of n will be n and mod of n will be minus n. In both the cases, you will have only two elements in this case, that is n comma minus n, no matter what is n, what integer n is, whether it's a natural number or it's an integer. So in this case, f of mod of n will always be same as n comma n, and we know that n belongs to this set, which is f of mod of n. So we have produced a natural number through this n, which is actually dependent on this n which we have taken, such that n is in that set. So I can say that as n is in one of this f case or f whatever the notation that you are using. So that's enough to say that n belongs to the union of this fk, where k is varying over the natural number. So that's the whole idea, and we have this. So then n belongs to minus n comma n, which is equal to f of mod of n. I have shown you why this is true. This is a subset of union of fk, which is equal to f. Basically, by definition itself, it is clear that if this is true, then n belongs to union of fk for each k in n, and therefore f is equal to z difference 0, or here we have proved that z difference 0 is a subset of f, and therefore f is equal to z difference 0. Okay, so that's we have proved the result. One more example here I would take is that this fr, this is a subset of R2. So fr is a set of all x comma y belongs to R2 such that x is equal to R and y is any real number. So basically this fr, you can see that this is the set of points lying on a line x equal to R, lying on a line which is parallel to y-axis, and it is passing through the point r comma 0. So we have something like this. Then suppose this is my r, then this straight line, the set of points on this line denotes fr. Okay, fine. So here the index set is what? R is varying over the whole real number. So therefore the index set is so indexed by this R, set of real numbers. So that means R is varying over this whole real line, this real line. Fine. So the question is, what is union of fr if when R is varying over the set of real number? So for each real number we will have a straight line. So for example, if my r is, if this is the real number, say any real number r1, for that I am going to have this fr, and from this picture it will be clear that for each of this real line, and this real line are dense. Okay, so therefore for each of this real line we are going to have a line like this, a straight line which is parallel to y axis, something like this, and it's going to be very, very dense. And so like that, if I vary the r over this real line on x axis, then what you will see that you have covered entire R2 plane. So that's why the union of fr when r is varying over the real number is nothing but the whole R2. So that is the claim we have. So for each observe that each FR is a line x equal to R in the plane R2. This gives us the hint that union of FR over R should be whole R2, and that's what we prove in the next step. So first thing is very easy to prove. Each FR is a subset of R2, so therefore union of FR is a subset of R2. That is trivially true. Now we just need to show that R2 is a subset of union of FR. So you would take any element in R2. So let x comma y belongs to R2. Then x comma y obviously belongs to f of x, because see, x comma y will be a point somewhere here, but this x is coming from this point, that is x comma 0, and corresponding to x comma 0, this x comma 0 will lie on a straight line, this straight line, and this line is nothing but x equal to x, right, and y is any real number. So therefore that is nothing but fx. This denotes fx in this case. I would take it, okay, by the definition. And if x comma y belongs to fx, so if x comma y is at least one of this fr, by definition of union of fr, this x comma y have to be in union of fr for each r in R, and therefore this proves that R2 is a subset of union of fr, and by the basic property of fr, each of this, since we know that each of this fr is a subset of R2, from here we have union of fr is a subset of R2, and from both this steps you can say that the union of fr is your whole R2. Next we discuss the intersection of a family of set in a similar way. So suppose we have a family of sets indexed by a non-empty set lambda. The collection has the element f alpha. Alpha is coming from lambda, where u is and u is a universal set. The intersection of family of sets is defined by intersection of f alpha. Alpha is varying over lambda, so this is the notation. This is bigger intersection. It's a set of all the point in U in the universal set such that these points are common to every f alpha. So these points belongs to each f alpha. So how would I write down? For each k in lambda, x belongs to fk. Okay, so that is same as saying x is lying in each of f alpha. So that is same as saying for each alpha in lambda, x is in f alpha. So in other words, intersection of f alpha is a set of all elements of U which belongs to all f alpha, and therefore I can say that x belongs to intersection of f alpha where alpha is varying over this lambda if and only if x is in f alpha for all alpha in this index set. So we observe this, one would observe this remark, which is a generalization of finite intersection. What does it says? Finite intersection and finite union. So what does it says? That the intersection of the family of a set will be contained in the union of family of sets. That's trivially true. I mean, the proof, if you want, we can write down here. So what I'll do, I'll start with any element in the intersection of f alpha. Okay, by the way, this lambda has to be a non-empty set, and because of that only we can proceed further. So I can talk about this f alpha provided this lambda is non-empty. So this is same as saying x belongs to f alpha, okay, for each alpha in lambda, and since lambda is non-empty, I can say that, this is enough. We want to show that x is in at least one f alpha, so that is same as saying that there exists alpha in A such that x belongs to f alpha, and in fact it is true for each alpha coming from lambda, right? So I can say that there is an alpha in A provided this lambda is non-empty. So therefore there exists alpha in A such that alpha in lambda such that X belongs to F alpha, and therefore we have so this says that X is in the union of F alpha, because we succeeded in producing an element in lambda such that X is in that F of alpha. And this says that we have arbitrarily started with any element in intersection, and we proved that it also belongs to its union, and therefore this proves that hence we can say that intersection of F alpha is contained in union of F alpha. Alpha is varying over lambda. Here is one more example. Consider the family of set Fk which is equal to minus k, 0, k. This is how the Fk is defined, and the index set is set of natural numbers, so that k is varying over the natural number. What is intersection of Fk? So first you observe that each of this Fk, your F1 is going to be minus 1, 0, 1, right, as per the definition. F2 would be same as minus 2, 0, 2. F3 would be same as minus 3, 0, 3, and this goes on. Now what you observe in each of this set, in each of this, see we want to find union of intersection of Fk where k is varying over the natural number. So we want to see the common element in each of these Fk's, right? So you can see that 0 is the only common element in each of this Fk. You have in F1 you have 0, in F2 you have 0, in F3 you have 0, and no other element remain common when you vary the k in the natural number. So that gives us the hint that the intersection of Fk, see whenever we have a question of this type, we need to guess the solution and then we need to justify it. So that gives us the hint that the intersection of Fk should be a singleton 0. So we prove it next. So first thing, clearly 0 is in each of these Fk, so I can say that 0 belongs to Fk for each k in n. Hence I can say that if I compare it as a set, the singleton set is a subset of intersection of Fk. Now I would prove it the other way around. So if I take any, so what basically I have to show that if I take any element in this intersection, I have to show that it is equal to 0. Okay, so this we show using this way. So if k is not equal to 0, then k will not be an element of f of mod of k plus 1. If k is not equal to 0, then it is not going to be an element of f of basically this plus 1 should come in the suffix. Okay, it is not here. So in that case, k is not a part of intersection of Fk for each k in n, and k is not equal to 0. So hence intersection of Fk, the only possibility for this Fk is the singleton 0. So how do we, basically what we do over here is that we show that if k is not equal to 0, then we show that k does not belongs to the intersection of Fk for each k in n. So therefore only possibility for intersection of Fk is the singleton 0. Okay, so I am taking arbitrary any k varying over the natural number which is not equal to 0. So if k is not equal to 0, then I know that k, in fact k only belongs to this set minus k, 0, k. If k is any integer basically, in this case this would be same as f of mod of k, but k does not belongs to, if I take the f of mod of k plus 1, in that case this is same as minus k minus 1, 0, k plus 1. So k is not in this set, so it is enough to produce one such f such that k is not in that set, and therefore again I can say that k is not in intersection of f of k, right? And this says that only possible element in the intersection, because we have already proved that 0 is contained in intersection of f of k. This is another way of proving that the intersection of f of k is equal to 0. So only possible element in the intersection is this 0, as it is contained in 0. No other integer belongs to the intersection of fk from this statement. Now we have a very important property in calculus which I would be using further to assert certain statement. So given any real number x, what is this Archimedean property says? Given any real number x, there exists a natural number such that n is greater than x. In other words, the set of natural number is not bounded above in R. So what does it means? That this real number will never be an upper bound for this, for a set of natural number. So why do we want this? Because we can have a problem of this type. So if we have a let the universal set be R and the index set be n, for a natural number n, we define Jn to be 0, 1 by n, identify the intersection of Jn where n is varying over the natural number. So for each natural number we have this Jn. So geometrically, how would we write down this Jn? See, J1, if I construct, this is simply going to be 0, 1 by 1, so it is 0, 1. J2 would be same as 0, 1 by 3. J3 would be same as 0, 1 by, so this is 1 by 2, 1 by 3, and this goes on. So geometrically, if I see this, the J1, it is starting from 0, and the maximum, the bigger interval that we can get through in this sequence is nothing but 0, 1, and then it keeps on shrinking, keeping this one end fixed. So what we have, the next J2 is nothing but half, J3 is nothing but this is the interval, this is your J2, this is your J1, then you have J3, so that will lie somewhere here, so this is your J3, and it goes on. So you can see that this intervals keep on shrinking as n goes as n goes on increasing, and this 1.0 is fixed on the left hand side, but we know that for no n, this 0 will be inside the interval, and from the general results of limits, as n tends to infinity, 1 by n tends to 0. So this 1 by n, actually we want to see the intersection of Jn. So this 1 by n shrinks towards 0 as n keeps on moving further and further, and so from that we get the hint that this intersection of Jn have to be an empty set, and that's what we prove here. So what we do here is that I'll just wipe this part so that I can get a space. So that is my claim in this solution. So what we will be proving is that intersection of Jn, where n is varying over the set of natural number, is empty. This I have identified, and the justification for this would be simple if you know the Archimedean property. So I would prove this using contradiction. So let, if possible, I mean this is the only way one can prove that the set is empty. I want to show that this set is empty. So if there exists, that if possible there exists x in U such that x belongs to the intersection of Jn for each n in n. So what does this basically means? That x is in the intersection is in the Jn for each n in n by the definition of intersection. So this means that x belongs to 0, 1 by n for each n belongs to n. But what does that mean? You all know the definition of interval. So basically this stands for 0 is less than x less than 1 by n for each n belongs to n. So is that a contradiction? Is that a contradiction? So since x is positive, I can talk about 1 by x, and this would actually allow me to say that n is less than 1 by x for each n belongs to n. So does this gives me the contradiction? So basically what this says, that 1 by x is an upper bound for the set of natural number, and so I can say that n is bounded above in R, which is contradiction, which is never true. And so why we are getting this contradiction? Because I've assumed that there is an element in this intersection of Jn which is never true, and therefore our assumption is false, and therefore the intersection of Jn is always empty. Let us take one more question. Express the singleton set 0 as the intersection of Jn. N is varying over the set of natural numbers, so the index set is natural number where each Jn is an open interval. Also, this has to be closed. Also express 0 as intersection of Jn where each Jn is closed interval. I would do one part for you, that is I would express this singleton 0 as the intersection of Jn where each Jn is an open interval. So idea is basically again from from the limits. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll construct this sequence of intervals Jn. So I'll take this Jn to be open interval minus 1 by n, 1 by n. Now why I've chosen this? If you see this geometrically, for n equal to 1 you have the bigger set, that is minus 1, 1. So this is your J1. This entire interval is Jn which contains 0. So when you keep on increasing the value of n, you will see that the interval shrinks towards this 0, and since 0 is common to every element, every Jn, the intersection of Jn is the singleton 0. That's what we are going to show. So if you want to see J2 will be minus half to half, right? So this is smaller than J1. J3 again you will see that it is 1 by 3, minus 1 by 3 to 1 by 3, and this goes on shrinking towards 0, and therefore I prove that with this Jn which I have defined for each natural number, intersection of Jn is going to be a singleton 1. So that's my claim. So this is a very interesting result. Again, it's an application of Archimedean property, and we can very easily prove this using Archimedean property. So let's see the proof for this. Here this is not 1, this is 0. Yeah, that's what we want to show actually. So how do we show this? Now again I start by any element in the intersection of Jn, and what I will gradually show that only possibility for this x is that x has to be equal to 0, and that proves that the intersection of Jn have to be a singleton 0. So x is in fact any arbitrary element in R, and I'll show that x is equal to 0 from here. So if x belongs to intersection of Jn, this means by definition x belongs to each Jn, that is each minus 1 by n, 1 by n. So x belongs to this for each n belongs to n. So what does this mean? This means that this is still not clear, so this means that x lies in between minus 1 by n and 1 by n, and this is true for each n belongs to n, right? And therefore I can say that using the property of modulus, mod of x is strictly less than 1 by n, and you all know that mod of x is greater than or equal to 0 for each n belongs to n. Whenever this happens, whenever we have a non-negative quantity which is less than or equal to 1 by n, for less than or in fact even equal to 1 by n for each n in n, for each natural number, then only possibility for that non-negative number is 0. This is an application of Archimedean property. One can very easily prove it again using Archimedean property. So I am not going to show you the detailed steps over here. You can try, you can reduce this out to the Archimedean property. So we have mod of x is equal to 0, that implies that x is equal to 0, because mod of real number is equal to 0 only when that real number is 0, and this proves that the only possible element in this intersection is the singleton 0 element. So that with this I end up this session, and in next session we are going to discuss the Cartesian product, in fact the pairwise disjoint and pairwise disjoint family of sets, as well as the Cartesian product. So thank you very much for watching this video. Stay tuned for the next video and have a nice day ahead.